Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to be going over 5 things to stop saying to yourself in order to improve your mental health and get out of a place where you might be feeling stuck. So the things that I'm going to go over in this video are things that I've heard from a lot of people that they keep telling themselves, and what I've seen has been holding them back a little bit, and I've experienced this as well. These are all things that I've told myself at one point or another, and it's really kept me from, recovering or getting better in a meaningful way, or it's held me back from getting the support that I really needed. So diving right into my list, I'm going to start off with the one that I hear probably most commonly from people as a reason why they don't seek out mental health support. And that is, I am not sick enough. I think people have this maybe assumption of what it means to be struggling with mental health and what it means to have a mental illness and to be diagnosed with a mental illness. And I think people think that you need to be suffering an intense amount and you need to have your life you need to be pretty much non-functional within your life. But that's just not the case. I think that the best thing to do is probably to intervene before it gets to a point like that. And I think something that kind of goes hand in hand with this feeling of not feeling like you're sick enough to access supports or help is this feeling that you maybe don't deserve help or support based on the state that you're in right now, based on a multitude of other factors. But what I really want to convey here is that everyone is so deserving and worthy of support for their mental health. And it really doesn't matter where you find yourself along the continuum of struggle that you're experiencing with your mental health. Wherever you land, if you are experiencing any level of distress, you absolutely are worthy of and deserve care and support. Another thing that can kind of go along with this feeling like you don't deserve help or support is this feeling that maybe, friends or family or even professionals that you're seeking support from or thinking about seeking support from don't really want to help you. And that's just not the case. I am very confident that the people who love you and care about you in your life want to offer you support and want to support you the best they can. Likewise, professionals who are literally there to support you, that's their job, definitely are in it to, support you in the best way that they can. And so I would encourage you not to fall into this trap of feeling like people don't care or that they don't want to support you, or ultimately that you don't deserve care, because you absolutely do. And there are people who want to be there to support you. The second thing I need people to stop saying to themselves is that maybe this will all just go away. I get that this is a really easy thing to fall into, and it's maybe a good thing in some ways because it means that you still have a degree of hope that things will get better and whatnot. But it's kind of doing yourself a disservice to think that, keeping going along the same way that you've been doing, keeping, not changing anything really, or seeking external support is going to have a different result, because it's not going to, very likely. It's likely that if you keep going along the same path, nothing's going to change or things will get worse. And so I want to encourage you to not just have this idea that things will magically resolve on their own. I really want to encourage you to take the steps to access more support before things get to a place where they're even worse. Something else that I hear a lot and that I've also experienced along this topic of not deserving help and feeling like people don't want to support you is the feeling that you would be bothering people by asking for their support. But I think that an easy way to kind of counteract this is to think about how you would feel if someone asked for support from you. Would you feel bothered by it if someone you cared about asked for support? I'm going to guess that you wouldn't, and that you would want to support them. And so it's very likely to infer that the people in your life who love you will not be bothered by you asking for their support either. And in fact, they probably really want to help and support you. And now the third thing that I want people to stop saying to themselves is kind of the opposite of the last one. And it's along the lines of, what's the point? This will never go away. That's kind of when hope is kind of completely gone. And that also is impeding, recovery and moving forward in a meaningful way, because it's kind of just giving up. And it's saying that, well, no matter what I do, things will never get better. And I want to really encourage you to not fall into that kind of detrimental thinking, because it's kind of the way it's going to play out if that's what you're believing, that things will never get better and that, things will always feel difficult and full of despair and whatnot. Making changes in your life can be a really difficult thing, and it's okay if it feels hard and insurmountable at times, but the more you practice making positive changes in your life, the easier it's going to be, and I think ultimately you will end up seeing some results, and things don't always have to feel as hard and heavy as they may be feeling right now. Now, this fourth one is definitely something that I have felt numerous times throughout my mental health journey, and that is the thinking that no one will ever love me. And this kind of stems greatly from, the struggles that someone who's having difficulties with their mental health or who's living with a chronic mental illness face, and feeling like, those difficulties lead to, impeding you from ever having a meaningful relationship and obstructing you from having someone, fully love you. But I think something that's really important to understand is that you are not your illness. And it may feel really easy to feel like no one will ever love you because of your illness, but that's just not the case. Your illness is not who you are. And it is absolutely possible for someone to love you for you, even living with the illness that you live with. And I think ultimately, if you have the mindset that no one will ever love you and that no one could ever love you, I think that's actually getting in the way of probably the most important relationship that you have, and that is the one that you have with yourself. If you're telling yourself that no one will ever love you, that's going to make it very difficult for you to love yourself. And that may sound very corny, but I think that that's a really important component of wellness, is having a good and kind of loving and healthy relationship with yourself as well. And the fifth and final one is maybe not the most important one, but I think that it's probably the one that I personally struggle with the most, and that I know a lot of other people who are living with similar illnesses to me struggle with as well. And that is the one around comparing yourself to other people and saying things to yourself like, I can't do what other people can. Or even, I can't do what I could do pre-diagnosis. I could have a really lengthy conversation with you about, ableist structures and how this narrative in our heads really comes from an ableist system overall, But I think the important thing to keep in mind here is that it's important to keep focused on your own capacity. It really doesn't matter what other people are doing, because the reality is that they're not facing the same challenges or circumstances as you are. They have a completely different set of circumstances and, life obstacles and whatnot that may be completely different from what you are facing. And so understanding that and giving yourself grace to, maybe perform differently from other people is really important. And I think this also really comes into play when you're dealing with mental illness with your comparison to your past self. That is definitely something that I get pretty hung up on in terms of kind of mourning my lost capacity as I experienced the onset of my illness. I've kind of been working on coming to terms with the idea that it's okay that my life looks different and that my capacity looks different than it once did. It doesn't mean that I'm any lesser of a person. It doesn't mean that I have any less value. It really just means that my life is different now. And that doesn't mean that it's any less meaningful, any less full. It's just different. I think part of this mourning process gets a little bit complicated by the fact that mental illness is ultimately an invisible illness. And so, if someone was in some kind of accident and they lost an arm, there's this understanding that they're still the same person. They just might have to, find different employment if they did something that required use of their arm before. Or they might just, their life might look a little bit differently adapting to their lost limb. Whereas with mental illness, it's harder to separate that a little bit from who the person is. And you get more wrapped into the line of thinking of, I'm a lesser person now because I have these increased challenges or these differences in functioning. But that's just not the case. The ultimate reality is that it is still just a health issue that you're dealing with and that you may need some accommodations for or adjustments in your life. And that is completely okay. It doesn't make you any lesser of a person or any different of a person even. So this is my list of 5 things that I feel people who are living with mental illness or difficulties with their mental health at all need to stop saying to themselves. I think maybe an easy way to kind of check yourself on this is to think about if a friend of yours or a loved one of some sort is saying this to you about themselves. What would you say to them? Would you be okay with them saying those sorts of things to themselves? Or would you be able to see more clearly that that line of thinking is ultimately holding them back? If you have any other thoughts on what people should stop saying to themselves in order to have better mental health, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. If you found this video helpful or if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and also make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. Also, you can help support the creation of videos like this by checking out the link to our Patreon page in the description below. Once you become a patron, you also gain access to our online peer support community, which is a really wonderful resource. So if that's something that interests you, make sure to check that out. Thank you so much again for watching, and as always, wishing you and your loved ones good health. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.